Welcome to the 64th season of the Colorado Shakespeare Festival and our Original Practices production of Pericles. Our 2021 season also includes A Midsummer Night's Dream and The Odyssey, adapted by Mary Zimmerman. My name is Heidi Schmidt, and I am part of the outreach staff here at CSF. I am also the prompter for Pericles, so you'll see me hanging out under a tent stage right during the show. The goal of this video is to give you some context about the play and about original practices so you have the best possible experience. We'll start with some information about the play itself, then we'll spend a few minutes talking about the process of original practices. Before we dive in, I want to acknowledge that we are filming this video from the traditional lands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations. Let's start with some background information about the play. This play is all about location. There are 6 different locations all around the Mediterranean. Think of it as a Shakespearean road movie, if that helps. Pericles is written late in Shakespeare's career, and it's often classified as a romance. It's written about the same time as The Winter's Tale, Cymbeline, and The Tempest. So if you know any or all of those plays, you might find some things in common with them. Romance plays often deal with themes of redemption and reconciliation. They contain long journeys, and this one has a doozy. And there's often a lot of magic present in the scripts. They feel a little bit like fairy tales. If your experience with Shakespeare is the big famous tragedies, capital letters intended, Hamlet, Lear, this might feel a little, well, wackadoo maybe, and maybe a little un-Shakespearean to you. I personally have no historical or scholarly basis for this, but I like the idea of Shakespeare as a human and as a writer getting tired of all the pain and suffering and just wanting to have some fun on stage for a bit. However, if you need or like a little bit of substance with your Shakespeare, it is in Pericles. So look for the use of archetypes within the play. Look for theme and variation. What storylines are repeated, inverted, or otherwise changed along the way? Look for the comparisons and contrasts amongst those storylines or those other elements. If you want a starting point, look for father-daughter relationships. How many examples of them? How do they vary? Which ones do you think are the good relationships? Which ones are the bad relationships along the way? We know that Pericles was a very popular play in Shakespeare's day, and we know this because it was printed 6 times in quarto. However, critics have not always been fans. Ben Jonson, who is a contemporary of Shakespeare, called it a moldy tale, quite famously. There are some authorship questions along the way as well. Some people think that Shakespeare only wrote the last 3 acts of the play, and another playwright, probably George Wilkins, may have written the first 2 acts. We're not sure, but that seems to be the likely scenario accepted today. Shakespeare adapted Pericles from several existing sources, including the work of a 14th century English poet named John Gower. Make a note of that, he'll come back later. Another fun fact, in 1623, Shakespeare's friends and colleagues banded together to print what we call the first folio, or the first edition of the complete works of William Shakespeare. This is important because about half of the plays, 18 of them to be specific, included in the first folio probably wouldn't exist today if they hadn't printed it. But, and here's the fun fact, Pericles is not included. It was added later in the 3rd folio, which was published in 1664. So here's the big question, why the exclusion? We don't actually know. It's the short version. There are a couple of theories about why. One is the authorship question I brought up earlier. One of them is the question of, yes, it was printed 6 times, but were any of those versions really reliable? Maybe, maybe not. The third option, which in my view is more likely, but you don't have to take my word for it, is the possibility that the person who owned the rights to the printed play just wasn't interested in sharing with Shakespeare's colleagues in printing the first folio. So they might not have had the rights to print it. Again, we're not sure, so you can pick your favorite theory and run with it. Quick note about rights. Playwrights in Shakespeare's day did not actually have rights to their plays, and neither did the theater companies who produced them. Whoever published the play first, however, did have rights for future publication. All right, ready for a plot synopsis? Here we go. Remember that English poet John Gower, who was one of Shakespeare's sources for Pericles? Guess what? He is a character in the play. He is our narrator, and before each act and a few times in between, Gower comes in to give us some exposition, connect some story dots, tell us where in the world we are. The world in this case equals the Mediterranean. So we start the play in Antioch, where young Pericles is looking for a wife. The powerful king Antiochus the Great has a beautiful and eligible daughter. The catch is that anyone who wants to marry her has to solve a riddle first, and if he fails, he's killed. Pericles agrees to the terms and solves the riddle. Yay, Pericles! Problem: the riddle's solution is incestuous father-daughter relationship. Not so yay, Pericles. So Pericles has two choices. He can announce that he solved the riddle and be killed for knowing the king's secret, or Pericles can announce that he failed to solve the riddle and be killed for failing. Not good options. Instead, he sneaks out, escapes, and heads on home to Tyre, where his advisor Helicanus recommends he go into hiding for a little while to avoid Antiochus. He arrives next in Tarsus, where the city is on the verge of collapse due to famine. Good thing Pericles has a ship full of food, which makes him very popular with the locals, including the governor, Cleon, and his wife, Dionysa. Helicanus sends him a message in Tarsus that an assassin is looking for him, and he'd best get moving on to the next place. So Pericles leaves Tarsus looking for safe harbor. Next up, Pericles is shipwrecked off the coast of Pentapolis, a land ruled by King Simonides, where Pericles wins a tournament and the heart of Thaisa, the king's daughter. They marry. Yay, Pericles. Word arrives that Antiochus and his daughter are both dead. Yay? Now Pericles is no longer in danger. Yay. So Pericles and Thaisa, now expecting their first child, leave Pentapolis for Tyre. On the way, however, things take a turn for the worse. 1, there's a huge storm. 2, Thaisa gives birth to a baby girl, but the difficult birth kills Thaisa. 3, the sailors insist on burying Thaisa at sea since it's bad luck to have a body on board. Pericles reluctantly agrees and they throw her coffin overboard. 4th, they have no food for the newborn on board ship, so they have to dock at the nearest port. Luckily, that port is Tarsus, where Pericles has friends, remember? So he leaves the baby, Marina, with Cleon and Dionysa so he can get back to Tyre and reclaim his throne. And this is a point where the audience, you, get some inside info that the rest of the characters don't have. Thaisa's coffin washes ashore in Ephesus, where she is found by a local physician/magician, it's a little unclear, who revives her. Yay, Thaisa. However, she's convinced she'll never see her husband or her child again, so she joins Diana's temple in Ephesus as a priestess. And next, we have a 20-minute intermission during which 14 years pass because time works differently on stage. In that meantime, Marina has grown up to be a smart, beautiful, and well-liked young woman. Dionysa, however, is afraid that her foster daughter Marina is outshining her biological daughter, so she arranges to have Marina killed. Yes, really. But the attempted murder is interrupted by pirates. Yes, really. And Marina is rescued. Sort of, because the pirates take her to Mytilene and sell her to a brothel. Not cool pirates, where her virginity is basically put up for auction. Really not a cool brothel. Back in Tarsus, the attempted murderer tells Dionysa he succeeded in killing Marina, so she kills him. Hey, no witnesses. And she and Cleon, who's horrified but goes along with it, tell the recently arrived Pericles his daughter died of illness and there was nothing they could do. But look at this beautiful tomb we made for her. Pericles is devastated and vows never to speak or cut his hair again. Back in Mytilene, Marina has managed to shame every would-be customer into leaving her alone, including the local governor Lysimachus, who's so impressed with her he gives her a bunch of money for not sleeping with him. This frustrates the brothel owners, Pander and Bod, and their general servant, Bolt. Things are looking dire for Marina, but she convinces them she'd be less trouble to them if they set her up in town as a music teacher. They agree. Yeah, Marina. On his way home, it's not really on the way, but Shakespeare is not known for his grasp of geography. Pericles' ship has stopped in the harbor at Mytilene, and the word has spread about this sad king who's really let himself go. Lysimachus, remember him, he's the governor, boards the ship to say hi, but Pericles refuses to speak to him as he has refused to speak to everyone else. But hey, here's an idea. There's this incredibly talented and persuasive young woman in town. Maybe she can help him out. So Marina is brought on board and tells Pericles that if he thinks he's sad now, he should hear her story. They're miraculously reunited, and the goddess Diana descends, yes, really, and orders them to stop by her temple in Ephesus before they go home to Tyre. And once they arrive at the temple, they should step up and just tell their story to everyone present. At this point, I think you can probably figure out how things resolve because you've been paying attention and you know who's hanging out at Diana's temple in Ephesus. All right, next up, Original Practices describes our attempt to create a process that more closely resembles the staging practices and rehearsal conditions of Shakespeare's time. So a few of the elements that we include here. One is universal lighting. In our case, daylight at top of show, and a general wash as night falls. The audience, meaning you, can see us and we can see you. Which leads into the second element, which is direct address. There is absolutely no fourth wall in this production. These characters know that we have an audience and we often speak to you directly. Doubling would be number 3. Shakespeare's plays often feature upwards of 30 roles, but we think his acting company consisted of 12 to 15 actors, and our cast size fits a similar range. So you will see one actor playing many roles over the course of the show. Cue scripts. Shakespeare's company were not provided with a full script of the play. Actors only got their lines with a few words that cued them. We call these the cue scripts. Our actors also get cue scripts only in advance and are asked to memorize their lines before we start rehearsal, but not read the whole play. Shakespeare's productions featured music and sound effects from a live musician. Ours do as well. You've heard the phrase 2 hours traffic of the stage. These plays have continuous action. We use a very lean cutting to the script in order to make sure that our show clocks in at under 2 hours. Shakespeare's costumes were a fusion of old and new. His company wore contemporary dress combined with elements of the historical period of the show, but they were not precise about it. And these costumes were predominantly pulled from stock and selected by the actors. We're using a similar process. You might see contemporary elements and old elements pulled from CSF stock. We have a prompter on stage. It's me. Given how quickly these plays were rehearsed, productions often did have a prompter on stage or just off stage to offer lines when needed. This happens in a lightning fast rehearsal process. In modern theatrical practice, most shows get about 130 to 150 hours of rehearsal time. Pericles will get 20, which is much closer to how Shakespeare's company would have rehearsed these plays. Our acting company comes together autonomously and collectively. We don't really have a director in the way we think of it. We use an actor manager who kind of helps lead a little bit, but we really ask the actors to step up and make these decisions for themselves and amongst themselves and work together that way. So the actors come in with a lot of preparation and ready to work together with a collaborative spirit in order to make this work. One of the questions we like to ask ourselves for any play that we put in our season is, why this play today? Why is this relevant? And you are, of course, invited to come to your own conclusions about Pericles and find your own moments of resonance and recognition. For us, we find that these characters face such devastating situations and so many near catastrophes. Marina is nearly murdered, only to be taken by pirates and sold into a brothel. But later she finds her way out and she finds her family. Thaisa dies on board the ship and is buried at sea, only to be revived later. Pericles loses his wife and daughter and then finds them later. And we find so much hope in this. And when all seems lost, keep on keeping on, and maybe you'll get something, maybe something better will come from it. This play is honestly very chaotic. It goes everywhere and it seems so bumpy, and it makes you wonder so many times along the way, where are we going and what could possibly happen next? Feels a little like life, right? Especially this past year. All right, just to wrap up, we want to thank you so much for joining us online this year. Theater going is such a different experience for all of us this year, and we are so grateful that you are helping us keep theater alive and well in these uncertain times. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you enjoy Pericles. Bye. Blah, blah, blah. Drone. Lawnmower.
Do you know you are not plugged in?